Hey people of this beautiful world, welcome back to Angelic Embrace, where we document and narrate the glorious and life-changing near-death experiences sent in by you guys. It is greatly appreciated. So sit back, relax, know that you are loved, and let's get into today's near-death experience story. Consider subscribing and watching to the end to find out what happens. My NDE occurred on August 22, 2008, at 1:20 p.m. I had just turned 34 years old when I awoke early that morning in excruciating agony, and I was sweating profusely due to a high temperature. I couldn't even move. Even though I was in excruciating agony, I was able to reach for the phone and summon a family member to be driven to the emergency department. I went in and out of awareness, but I remained in my body. At the time, I hadn't experienced my NDE. I had just gotten out of a CT scan and was led to a section of the emergency department where the curtains were closed so we could wait for the findings and see what happened next. I was in excruciating agony and had been for some hours at this time. And at 7:30 a.m., I was brought to the emergency department. So I'd gone through quite a bit. The agony was becoming worse. My temperature was rising, and I was exhausted from being in so much discomfort for so long. So, while laying on the hospital gurney with my eyes closed, I started convulsing, and the veins in my head were bulging out from the strain. I thought my brain was going to burst from the stress, and when I realized I couldn't handle it any longer, I went extremely inward. I separated entirely from the outer world, from everyone and everything around me, from everything outside of my body. I told myself that I was going to die. This is how it feels to die. And I wasn't afraid. It was merely a matter-of-fact knowledge. I jumped out of my body at that very instant. I was no longer tied to my body, and the anguish had vanished. I was so removed that I didn't realize I was on the ceiling of the room I was in. And I was staring down at the scene below me, and I could see my body laying there on the stretcher, but my soul was no longer a part of that body, that it was just the shell of who I am. I saw the individuals around me messing about. I sensed their varied feelings of fear, bewilderment, wondering what was going on, taking action, and evaluating. And I was just looking at it from an observer's point of view. I was simply observing and basically noting what was going on. And as I began to float upward, I saw these small balls of white light pinging and bouncing about. And they were the souls of everyone who had been admitted to the hospital. And I saw how each ball of white light, each soul, was linked by a thin iridescent thread, and that's oneness and how we're all connected. And then things began to pick up pace, and I felt myself swiftly entering the tube. I felt like I was on a roller coaster since it was rapid and you never knew what would happen, but it was thrilling. And it was exhilarating, even euphoric, in the sense of, oh, I wonder where this is going to take me. And the tunnel trip was just a few minutes long. Then I sprang out of the tunnel and into the white light, and the tunnel was pitch black on the inside. So being immediately immersed in this dazzling, lovely white light takes some getting used to. And once I had a minute to acclimatize, the very next thing I felt was a huge amount of love, so much love that even talking about it now makes me tearful. It was the purest unconditional love I'd ever felt in my life. It was love for me that was pure and unconditional, regardless of what I had done in my life or what I had gone through. When my daughter was born and I had her after my NDE, the first time she was handed to me and the first time I held her, I remember looking in her eyes and she was looking in mine. And that love that I felt for her and that I could feel that she felt for me, that her soul could feel for me, it was very pure and it was very unconditional. The love in the light is much broader and deeper than that, which is difficult for me to comprehend as a human person presently in a human body. It's because I was stripped of my ego while out of my body during my NDE. My brain's restrictions were removed from me. My body's restrictions were removed from me. And the light I was in had none of those constraints either. As a result, there was enough of place for this entire, profound, unconditional, and pure love. I realized that it is also me, that I am that love, that we, human beings, are that love, that every soul is that love because we are one with that light. It's only when we enter our bodies and land on planet Earth that we experience what seems to be a separation. Yet the separation is an illusion. As I was soaking up that love, I understood that it is also who I am, and I'm constantly in sync with it. And that, despite the fact that I had felt alone many times in my life, that light and love had always been with me. Part of the calm I felt was that even though I had been in a lot of agony in the hours leading up to my near-death experience, I forgot about it all once I was out of my body and in the light. And I know there's a lot of dread of death, and I used to be afraid of what would happen next. And I believe many of us are concerned about how we will die. Will it be fast, or will we have to endure a great deal of suffering or illness? And a lot of the calm I had while I was in the light came from the fact that whatever I had to go through in order to transition out of my body, even if it was excruciating agony, wasn't even a consideration at that point. For me, it was simply something in the background. So there's a lot of comfort in knowing that death isn't the end, and that life is simply a chapter. And, however we eventually leave our bodies, there is nothing but peace and love waiting for us on the other side. I didn't want to get back into my body after that wonderful experience in the light. That was the only location I want. You must return, I heard the stern yet sweet and caring voice urge. And I continued to fight, claiming that I wanted to remain longer, but I realized it wasn't a discussion. Despite my protests, I felt myself being shoved back into the tunnel, gently pulled back into the tunnel, very fast rearward into the tunnel. Then, all of a sudden, I was back in my body. I returned to my body from the top of my head. And suddenly I was totally in my body long enough to realize I was back in this world, no longer in that white light. The discomfort returned shortly. I was then knocked out for many hours till considerably later that evening. The following morning, I discovered that I had a kidney stone that had been lodged in my ureter. So all of the poisons that are normally filtered out by your kidneys were getting back into my circulation, and my whole bloodstream had gotten horribly diseased. My internal organs were diseased and shutting down, and I was in septic shock. I saw a handful of family members who seemed terrified and anxious. There was medical personnel present. My surgeon was there, and I wanted to reassure everyone that if I was destined to die, if I was supposed to be dead, if this was the end for me, I would not have been returned. But I was unable to do so. It took me many years to digest a lot of what I really learned during my near-death experience and while I was in that wonderful light. And it was the assurance that everything was well. When we're in our bodies, the phrase everything is well doesn't make sense. We don't have a comprehensive view of what's going on while we're in our body. We don't see all that is going on. And when we're out of our bodies, when we're in the light, when we've transitioned out and are free of ego, our brain's limits, and our body's limitation, we get that 360-degree view. And when you have that 360-degree vision, when you see the whole picture, declaring that everything is okay makes perfect sense. And it's still bringing me a lot of serenity now that I'm back in my body. Nature does not rush, but all is completed, is a statement I enjoy that always helps to keep me in the quiet place of all is well and in the tranquil place of flow. And there's a lot of truth in that if we can simply get out of our own way long enough to let it be. So, after my NDE, I was tremendously determined to examine and repair my trauma. And mending isn't always enjoyable, but it's so worth it because you want those holes filled up and to feel whole again so you can live in the serenity of being your genuine and authentic self and experience the richness, love, and pleasure of really living in accordance with your soul's purpose. Your trauma will lead you to the location of your recovery, and it is through our trauma and conditioning that we have learned. And I genuinely think that our parents and caregivers did the best they could with what they had. It's taken me a long time to be able to say that and honestly believe it, as well as to heal whatever resentments I may have had. There's also a lot of calm once you get there. And if we can all look at our traumas, look at our hurting, and do what we can to repair it, our holes will begin to fill back in, our wounds will heal, and we will begin to feel whole here on earth so we may live out our actual purpose. Your mission is to be where you are at any given time, and knowing that brings a lot of comfort. If you're having a good day or a horrible day, if you shouted at your kids that day or if you had a beautiful day with your kids that day, you're always in your soul's mission because we're all here to learn. We are not required to be flawless every single day in order to fulfill our soul's mission. We're all still learning. We're all changing. We're all making good progress. And, although we're here to study, school is the planet. The earth is a classroom. And it might seem like the school of hard knocks at times. It's not entirely serious. Playground is available at every school. So, go find your playground and have some fun, because it's not all serious. And we definitely need to loosen up from time to time. If you've ever seen a bunch of kids on the playground attempting to come up with a game to play, they're creating one. They have so many different ideas and are eager to get the game started. But if you put a bunch of adults on the same playground to develop a game, the first thing we're going to do is think about everything that may go wrong in the game. And what if it doesn't work out? And what is the rule in this case? What is your role, and what is your role? That is really serious. And although that is occasionally necessary, we might learn a lot from the youngsters who gather together as a group to have fun, play a game, and just do what feels good. That has a lot of lessons for us. Every day, we all have a purpose, and we all have an ultimate purpose. And sometimes the objective is just to exist. You don't have to be always doing. Being is frequently all you need since it permits the flow to happen. It stops you from always getting in the way of the beauty that is attempting to blossom in your life and the lives of others around you. And your soul, intuition, and higher self are always there to guide you, to show you synchronicities, to open doors for you, to shut doors that aren't intended for you, and to just be quiet enough and continue to work on your healing so you can hear the wisdom of your intuition flowing through. Your soul recognizes you. Your soul understands if you'll get the message now, in 6 months, or in 6 years. Your spirit is already aware. You will never be rushed. All you have to do is attempt to be quiet enough to hear.